So if you're looking for some good budget alternatives to say like the QX120 fan by Corsair, or the Thermaltake Suave fan, or even the Lian Li SL fans, I want you to check out this fan by AsiaHorse. Now this is the COSMIQ UNI fan. It comes in 120 millimeters black or white. You can get either of those. And it's got this really cool infinity mirror look. One of its cool features is it is a modular fan, much like the other fans I just mentioned, meaning that one cable can connect all three fans. Now that will greatly help with cable management and simplify your installation. So this fan will be about 1/3 of the cost of the QX120 fans and roughly about half the cost of the Thermaltake fans or the Lian Li fans. So let's get this open, show you how it connects, we'll set it up and see how it looks. All right, so inside the box, we get 3 individually packed fans. They give you all of the screws necessary to mount the fans. You get the standard type screws. You also get the longer ones if you're gonna pair this up with a radiator. It comes with 2 connecting cables. Obviously it has the side that connects to the fan, which we'll get into in just a second here. But that does split off into 2 separate cables. One being the 5-volt ARGB connection, the other being the 4-pin PWM connector. The kit also does include a mini controller. Now this controller just has a single 5-volt 3-pin ARGB connection on it, and it is SATA powered, and it also does have another connector on it. Now this is for using your reset switch on your PC case. Basically you're going to take your front panel I/O for the reset switch, plug it into here, and then instead of using the buttons that are on this controller, you're going to use your reset switch. So my first impression of this fan is that it's a good quality fan. It feels well built. It's nice and sturdy. It's got a really cool look to it. It's got protective films over all of the surfaces, the infinity mirror surface that you'll need to take off. It's got protective covers over the pins on the one side of the fan. Now, again, these are modular fans. They connect together, and they connect in a similar fashion to the other fans that we've talked about in this video. The one side uses a number of different little pins here, and then the opposite side of the fan just has a connector on it. I would just be kind of delicate around these pins. You wouldn't want to bend those or anything like that. So how these connect is the one side of the fan has these protruding connecting lugs, and the other side has the holes that those fit into. And then of course the little connector is on the one side and the pins are on the other. That all mates up and then you snap it together. Now I have found that these are a little bit tighter than some of the other fans, but it does make a good connection. Now because you get 2 cables, you could split this kit up into 2 fans and 1 fan. You can power both of these at the same time, or you can put all 3 together and use 1 cable, which is the primary draw of this kit. And once you get those connected, it's a very solid connecting set of fans. You're ready to go. Now to get the cable connected, it's the same concept. There's just some protruding pins on this connector, and the little pin connector is on this connection. So basically take this, it lines up in only one direction and on only one side of the fan. So take the side with the pins and your connector, line up the connection pins, kind of push it in nice and flush, and then snap it up, and you are connected. That engages all those pins. You're ready to go. Now you don't really get any choice as to where to put this cable connection. It only goes on the one side and it only goes in one orientation. That could cause a problem depending on what orientation you're going to put this in your case. But the cables that come off of here are thin enough that I found that it really goes in any orientation. You can come off this way if you need to, or you can kind of bend it around on itself and go this way. So again, there's enough relief here and enough flexibility, for lack of a better term. So that's a good thing. You should be able to get this installed in any orientation that you need. Now, as I mentioned before, these are standard connections here. You get a 3-pin 5-volt ARGB connector. Now, this can use the mini controller, which we'll talk about in just a second. Or you could connect this up to, say, a motherboard ARGB header, or any other RGB controller for that matter. And the 4-pin PWM, again, it's just a standard connector. It could go onto a fan header on your motherboard or any other type of fan hub or controller. Now, let's talk about the specifications of this fan real quick, because you will need to take into consideration what the current draw is of this fan when you're mating it up with a controller. The RPM range is 800 to 2000. Now, I did connect it up to a Corsair controller, and that's exactly the speeds I got out of it. The minimum was 800. I was able to get it up to 2000. Now, that should generate the rated 68.5 CFM. Now, these specifications are per fan, of course. Now, they are rated at 2.05 millimeters H2O on the pressure end. They should be suitable for behind a radiator. I paired these up with a Corsair 360 millimeter radiator. In the cooling test that I did, these these performed adequately, just the same as any other fan. Now the noise rating is 29.2 dBA on the max side. Overall, I didn't find them really any noisier or any quieter than even some of the more expensive fans. So the current draw on the 12 volt side, which is the motor that runs the fan, is rated at 0.16 amps. So the current draw on the 5 volt RGB side is rated at 0.864 amps per fan. That's a little bit higher than some of the fans that I've looked at, and of course, you're going to see that maximum when you're like on white at full brightness. So just take that specification into consideration if you're going to connect it to something other than the included controller. But once you've got your connections made, go ahead and power up your PC and ensure that the fans are running and they're not interfered with. Make sure that your RGB lights are coming on. Now, if you're going to use the included controller, again, there's just a standard 3-pin 5-volt ARGB connector on the edge of this. It's kind of just built in. Basically, you're just going to make the connection directly to the fans. Now, of course, you could patch this into an RGB hub or something like that if you're going to do more than 3 fans, which I assume most of you are going to do. But it is suitable to run it in this fashion. Now, you get 3 buttons on this controller. You get an M button, S button, and a C button. Let's talk about what those do real quick. The M button is a mode button. So by default, when you first power this on, that's just going to cycle through all of the RGB lighting effects that are available to you. There's a number of them, and they do look pretty good. S is going to control the speed of those animations if there's an animation that's displaying at that time. C is just going to switch it into a color mode, which is just going to set a solid color. So very cool, looks good. If you press and hold the M button, it switches it into an audio mode. Now, the audio mode on this, I played around with that for just a little bit, is one of the better looking ones that I've seen. I don't use them personally all that much, but occasionally they're kind of fun to play around with. But this looked pretty cool when I was messing around with it. So the cable from your reset switch will just connect up into these 2 pins here, and it gives you the capability to use your front panel reset switch instead of the controller remote. Because obviously, once you get these installed, if you're using this, this is going to be tucked up in the rear of your case, all nicely cable managed, right? And so it's really going to be inconvenient to be using these buttons. So I highly recommend using this. I used it on this case and it works great. So the reset button function is going to be similar to the controller with a couple little differences that we'll talk about. Now, when you first power it up, it's just going to be in its standard RGB lighting mode. And if you hit the reset button, it's going to cycle through all those different lighting effects. Works just as we would expect it to. Now, if you press and hold the reset switch, the lights will flash white and it will put it into the audio mode that we talked about earlier. From that point, you can then repeatedly hit the reset switch and it will change it into the different lighting effects available in the audio mode. And there's a number of them there that look pretty cool. If you press and hold it again, they'll flash white. You're changing it into the color mode. And then if you hit the button again after that, it will just change it to the solid colors. If you press and hold it again for 2 seconds, again, it flashes white. Just cycles it back to the original RGB lighting mode. And so it works really well, is way more convenient, is pretty intuitive, and I didn't have any problems with it whatsoever. Now, talking about the RGB lighting itself looks really good. I really do like this infinity mirror function. You know, on the edge pieces, it looks really good. You got the AsiaHorse logo, and the lighting just kind of looks cool coming out of the side and from the front hub. So overall, from an RGB lighting perspective, I personally just think it's a really cool looking fan. Everybody's gonna have a different opinion on that, but I just thought it looked really cool, and the lighting effects that you get out of the included controller were actually really well done. But I will let you be the judge of whether you like the look of it or not. Like I said, everybody's going to have a different opinion there, but let me know what you think in the comments below. I think it looks pretty cool. So overall, I think this is a really cool looking fan. The quality of it's pretty good for 50 bucks. And I think it looks great personally. So is this an exact replacement for the QX120 fans and the SWA fans from Thermaltake and the Lian Li fans? Well, no, of course not. Those fans bring extra things to the table, like, you know, switchable fan blades. You know, the Corsair fans have the IQ Link system, which gives you a lot of other capabilities, and that's a really cool fan, the QX120. But this is a really cool, more budget-minded fan that I would highly recommend. Check it out, give it some consideration if you're looking to save a few bucks on there. Now, obviously, there are cheaper fans out there. In fact, this exact fan, I think probably you might be able to find for cheaper. I've seen some other ones out there that have this kind of infinity mirror look to it and would be maybe even on the cheaper end. May even be the same fan. It's hard to tell without, you know, really comparing the two. But let me know in the comments below if you've used these fans from AsiaHorse and what your opinion is of them. Would you use these in your case? I really always like to hear what you guys think about this stuff. It's just kind of fun to mess around with, if nothing else. So anyways, Let me know in the comments below what you think. That's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching.